we move on to the NFC North, I should say, please hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or send this link out to anyone who might be interested in football and doesn't know about our podcast or website, or check out walterfootball.com for all the season previews. So let's get to the NFC North. The Packers won this last year going away, but they made some interesting moves in the draft, and they may not win it again this year. So what are your thoughts on the Packers?
Yeah, so that move in the draft, you and I have kind of been on opposite ends of the spectrum on this one this year, as opposed to in regards to what it means for the team. I think we both agreed that the decision to draft Jordan Love in the first round after trading up was a rather foolish decision to make, given that they needed to make some upgrades to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But at the same time, I think that the presence of Jordan Love is going to piss off Aaron Rodgers enough that he's going to put together a great season. And I know he hasn't been himself for a couple of years. He's been dealing with the injury issues. And last year, you know, he wasn't a prolific passer, and they didn't really have any receiving weapons outside of Devontae Adams. But over the course of NFL history, when you see a really good veteran quarterback get competition brought in for him, they tend to step up and have really good seasons to prove that they can still do it. In essence, the motivation is there for Rodgers to say, like, hey, you invested in the future, but you should have been investing in the present. So I think Rodgers is going to have a big year, even though the team didn't really upgrade their receiving core. Sure, they signed Devin Funchess, but he's not that exciting. He's just big. That's it. So I think that he's going to have to find some weapons or create some weapons on this offense. And his offensive line's a little bit worse because they lost Brian Bulaga and added our guy Rick Wagner to the mix there. I think he goes by Rick, but everyone calls him Ricky, and it bothers him. I don't know. I read that somewhere recently. So
wow.
Yeah.
I've always called him Ricky Wagner. I had no idea it bothered him. Now that I know, I'll continue to call him Ricky Wagner.
Yeah. I don't actually know if it bothers him, but I think he might have been like, yeah, it's Rick, but everyone calls him Ricky. It's confusing. It was a story I read probably at like 3 a.m. one day, so I wasn't like that into it. But anyway, Rick or Ricky Wagner aside, I think that the Packers defense was super improved last year. I like Mike Pettin as a coach. The Smith brothers, who aren't actually brothers, Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, really upgraded their pass rush and made a massive difference for them. I think their secondary's in great shape with Savage and Amos at safety and Jair Alexander and Kevin King on the outside. I would have liked to see them add a little bit more in their defensive front to go with Kenny Clark, but they have enough guys up there that can get the job done. I think they're going to have to rely on their defense a little bit more this year. Rodgers will carry the offense, but the defense is going to have to be really strong for them to get back to the NFC Championship game. I think that the Packers are going to challenge for this divisional crown. I think they look on paper like they're posed to regress, and I agree with that assessment, but I also just think that when you give a veteran quarterback a reason to be pissed off and play hard, he's going to play up to that talent level. So we'll see what Rodgers can do, but I'm a believer in him this year.
Hey, I wouldn't be too upset if I'm wrong. I love Aaron Rodgers. I would love to see him win another Super Bowl. But I can't like fully get on board with that. Like I get that he's going to be motivated. I don't question that at all. The problem is that, you know, first of all, he doesn't have the receiving talent around him. Outside of Adams, that's it. Like, they don't have a good receiver. As you know, Alan Lazard is the number 2 receiver, and like that's not ideal. Like, I can't believe that they didn't address the position at all this offseason. Second, Brian Bulaga's gone. You mentioned Rick Wagner is now the right tackle there, and yeah, he's a big downgrade. The Lions fans will tell the Packer fans that they were very disappointed with Wagner and how he played for Detroit over the years. So injuries have just like derailed him, and I don't know if he can stay healthy. So they have a downgraded offensive line, and it just doesn't seem like the coaching staff is very invested in him. Like we've heard reports that like Matt LaFleur doesn't want Rodgers around anymore. Like the front office doesn't want Rodgers around anymore. I just don't know if it's weird to say this, but I don't know if the coaching staff is going to have the motivation to win with Rodgers. It's weird, but that's why I gave the Packers coaching 1 star. It just doesn't like what they're doing doesn't really make any sense to me. So these 3 things bother me a lot, and the fact that they didn't fix their run defense at all just really was just puzzling. I mean, they got trampled against the 49ers in 2 games last year. NFC Championship, they had no chance of stopping Raheem Mostert, and they didn't do anything to fix the run defense. Like they added Christian Kirksey, but he's been bad the past few years, and they didn't draft anyone. I thought maybe in the second round or third round they draft like a run plugger to really help. But instead they spent their second round pick on the third running back, and their third pick was a fullback. So I don't get what they're doing at all. And last year they were very lucky at times. Like they almost lost to the Lions at home on Monday Night Football. They got to play the Chiefs when Mahomes was out. They got to play the Cowboys when they were missing like their entire offense. They barely beat the Redskins late in the year. They barely beat David Blau in week 17. It just seemed like this team was just like getting lucky with their wins. And I think variance could really hurt them this year. Aaron Rodgers, it never stays healthy for an entire year. He did last year, but like that seldom happens. So I think there's a good chance Rodgers misses a couple games this year, or maybe gets banged up and isn't 100%. So I think this team is definitely on the decline. I have them 7-9 on the website now. I could see them doing much better if everything works out and maybe Lazard takes a big step forward. They can get to like 10 or 11 wins, but I think there's a good chance that they just miss the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and everything you've said makes sense from an argument standpoint. I totally see the reason the Packers would regress it, especially when you bring up all their close wins last year that could have been losses had they not been lucky. And when you bring up what the coaching staff and front office are doing and seemingly trying to phase out Rodgers, that's definitely an interesting point. I don't know why they would do that. I know that Rodgers has regressed a bit in recent years, but he's still a solid quarterback. It's not like he's not a top 10 quarterback anymore. I guess if you look at this team, you have to find some weapons for Rodgers on the roster. And I think the only way that this is going to happen is if guys like Jay Sternberger and Josiah DeGara, who both of the tight ends, both third-round picks in the last 2 years, they're going to have to step up and find ways to be weapons. I think Alan Lazard's going to have to step up and find a way to produce. And unless Funchess finds chemistry with Rodgers, it could be a slog for them, and they may have to be a run-heavy team. I agree with you. The A.J. Dillon pick was maybe not as puzzling as the Jordan Love pick, but it was up there. I just don't get why they would choose a running back. And I love A.J. Dillon. So this there seems to be some lack of harmony with what the roster needs to compete now and what the roster needs to have a solid future. And I think LaFleur and Gutekunst are planning for the future right now so that they can be well positioned to have success after Rodgers. But I think they needed to wait one more year before officially doing that.
Yeah, I think they're hurting themselves. Charlie Campbell brought this point up when we did our draft recap. The advantages of having a young quarterback is that they're on a rookie contract. And because they're on a rookie contract, you get to spend so much money elsewhere. That's why you see so many second and third year quarterbacks having so much success. The problem is that Jordan Love is going he's not going to be able to play. Well, maybe in his third year, but I think this year and the next year, he's not going to be able to play. So they're not going to have Jordan Love for very long in that rookie deal. So they're not going to have that big advantage that other teams have with the young quarterbacks. So it's very weird that they did this. I think they could have waited 2 years to get their young quarterback. There are going to be some good quarterbacks in the 2022 NFL draft, we assume. So they could have gotten one of them. I don't think they needed to take Jordan Love, let alone trade up for him. It was just very puzzling by the Packers. So yeah, I disagree. I disagree with what they did. All right. So if the Packers take a step backward this year, who do you think wins the division then?
So if you had asked me this before the NFL draft, I might not have said this, but I think it's probably going to be the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Vikings had one of the best drafts, probably of any team. They somehow managed to amass like 15 picks, and almost all of them got like A or B grades for me. Like they did just such a good job of adding talent to their team. And I've frankly never seen a class like this where they've added 15 players and 10 of them could be contributors like pretty early in their career, or at least play key roles for a team. It starts in the first round. They got Justin Jefferson, who was a steal at 22. I think he's going to be a really good replacement for Stephon Diggs. I mean, trading him kind of sucked, and that was because he didn't really mesh with Kirk Cousins. But, I think Jefferson will pan out as a really good receiver at the next level. He should play well in the slot and give the team a good complement to Adam Thielen. But he's big and can also play on the outside, so he's got versatility. Then you look at, they drafted Ezra Cleveland in the round. He should upgrade either tackle or guard on the offensive line, depending on what they do. If I was coaching the team, I would probably try to have him play tackle and kick Riley Reif inside the left guard and move Elfline to the bench. But we'll see what they end up doing. They may not want to move Reif because he's been fine, but not great there. Another early pick, Jeff Gladney. He'll add depth at corner. They lost 3 corners in free agency this offseason, but they added 2 with a lot of upside, and Jeff Gladney and Cameron Dantzler. And then even Harrison Hand later on should be able to play a role in that secondary. So I think they did a good job of addressing their weaknesses. I think there are still some problems with this team. I love their defense overall, so I wouldn't call that a problem, but they're unproven at the cornerback position. So they need Gladney and Mike Hughes and Cameron Dantzler all to step up early in their careers. There may be some growing pains with the shortened offseason, so that's something to watch. But more of the problems are on offense. Their offensive line isn't great. I think their center, Garrett Bradbury's good. But outside of them, they kind of have average to below average players starting. Riley Reif at left tackle is kind of like, He's been okay there, but he's not ideal. You'd like to have him on the right side or on the inside at this stage in his career. So Cleveland's progress is going to be key there. And then quarterback, Kirk Cousins. I saw you having a debate with someone about this on Facebook, but Kirk Cousins is like a league average quarterback at best. Like, I might put him at 15 in the top 15. Like, that's about as high as I'm willing to rank him. Stats don't tell the whole story with him. He does really well against lower level competition, struggles in bigger moments, except against the Saints in the playoffs. He did very well there and deserves credit. But, more often than not, he is wilted to the spotlight. And so I think you can't really consider him better than average. The other issue is Dalvin Cook. He's injury prone and maybe holding out. So if he has injury issues or is off the field to start this offseason, there could be issues with the running game there. I love Alexander Madison, their 3rd round pick from 2019. I think he'll be a phenomenal replacement for Cook, but we're talking about depth at this point. And when they had both of them on the field last year, they were really able to have a strong running game. If it's just Madison and Mike Boone, who's, a solid 3rd stringer, don't get me wrong, but anytime you take away depth at running back, it makes it more risky. So I would like to see Cook report and not hold out. That would give me more confidence in the Vikings. If not, I think that running back room could get a little bit dicey just because of that whole situation. But I still think they should probably be favored to win the division over the Packers, even though I'm picking the Packers in my own mind.
Well, I do think that Madison will be fine there. I think that it'll be okay, because remember last year when Ezekiel Elliott was holding out and everyone's freaking out, and then Tony Pollard had an amazing preseason, and I was like, oh, that's okay if Elliott holds out, and then he just came back. I think Cook. Well, I think he'll miss 1 or 2 games. I don't think it'll be like an extensive holdout, like maybe 3 or 4 games, but I don't think it'll be that long. Like he'll be back eventually. Because of the holdout, though, I don't think he's going to be the same player. But I think Madison isn't that much of a downgrade. I like him a lot, and it's not like Cook can stay healthy or anything. He hasn't played a full season anyway. So Madison was going to make some starts anyway. So I like him. And don't forget about Mike Boone, who is the Walter Payton of the preseason. Like, he's just amazing in the preseason. And, he had a couple of chances to start last year. He kind of fell on his face the first time, but he improved the following week. So I think that Mike Boone's a solid backup, and I think he's going to be fine. Kirk Cousins is not someone called him like the number 7 quarterback in the NFL, which I don't understand. Like, it's crazy. Like, I mean, if you look at the stats, maybe, but football is more than just stats. So I don't like Cousins very much. I think he's subpar. He's not terrible or anything, but he's good against bad teams. And Mike Zimmer is great against bad teams too. Like, Mike Zimmer is a great coach, and I think he can get the most out of this team. I feel like he's gotten more out of the Vikings than most coaches have gotten out of their teams. Obviously not Bill Belichick or anything, but like most coaches in the NFL are not as good as Mike Zimmer. I just think he's a phenomenal coach, and he just gets his team to like they have a high floor because of him. And I think it's kind of like the Steelers with Mike Tomlin. Like it feels like they shouldn't be worse than 7-9 or 6-10. Like they have a high floor. And I think that getting Michael Pierce on their defense to upgrade Linval Joseph is huge. Their corners should be better this year. Like Xavier Rhodes is a big name, but he was horrible last year. So what they have now can't be worse. I like this team. Like I don't think they're great. If they were in a tougher division, I don't think I'd pick them to win the division. But the NFC North might be the worst division in the NFL, and I think it's wide open for the Vikings to win it.
Yeah, I think I agree with your sentiment that this was probably one of the worst divisions in the NFL, just because there are a lot of weaknesses on all the teams. But I think the Vikings are probably built best to withstand their weaknesses. And like you said, coaching will play a big impact or make a big impact on that. And I think Zimmer's the best coach in this division by far. I'm also looking at their depth chart too. And I love James Lynch, who they got in the 4th round. I thought he was an underrated defensive lineman. It looks like they got another player named Blake Lynch from Baylor at linebacker. And now I'm wondering if they're brothers. That has, again, no bearing on how this team will do, but I'm notable for my ability to look at depth charts and find out weird facts that don't matter and no one really cares about. So there's another one for you.
Nice. I should have mentioned Lynch. I love that pick. I thought it was a great pick. I thought he was going to go in the 2nd round. The fact that they got him in the 4th round was huge. It was a great steal. I think he can contribute this year as a situational pass rusher and then be a starter eventually.